A 32-year-old man stands in the middle of a weekend market, holding his boss's hand in front of a crowd, and accidentally calls her my wife. Laughter erupts. But Victoria Quinn, the powerful woman, ice cold, who never shows emotion, goes silent. That joking moment accidentally reveals a truth she's been hiding for months. And now, under a sudden downpour, the line between boss and employee begins to shatter. Follow my story to the end. Hit like and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled. Ryan Hale had never been good at lying. Not to clients, not to his daughter, and definitely not to himself. So when the vendor at the weekend farmers market looked between him and Victoria Quinn and asked with a grin too wide for the situation, "You two together?" Ryan should have just nodded politely, should have deflected with something vague and professional. Instead, he said, "Yeah, my wife." The words came out so easily it startled him. Victoria's hand, still loosely holding a basket of peaches, went completely still. The vendor laughed. A couple browsing nearby turned and smiled. Someone made a comment about them being a beautiful pair. Ryan felt his face heat, but he forced a grin and played along because what else was he supposed to do? Backtrack? Explain that she was actually his boss, that they worked together, that this whole outing was accidental and not remotely romantic? That would have made it worse. So he leaned into it, gave a little shrug, let the vendor ring up the peaches. But Victoria didn't laugh. She didn't even look at him. She just stood there, composed as ever, her expression unreadable in that way that made her so terrifying in meetings, the kind of face that could shut down an entire boardroom with one glance. Ryan had worked under her for 3 years. He knew that look well. It usually meant someone was about to get fired. "Victoria?" he said quietly, once they'd stepped away from the stall. "It's fine," she said, her voice smooth and controlled. Too controlled. "I didn't mean... I know." She handed him the basket without meeting his eyes and walked ahead, her heels clicking against the uneven pavement. Ryan followed, suddenly feeling like he'd crossed some invisible line he hadn't even known existed. They'd come here by accident, really. A work event nearby had wrapped early, and Ryan had mentioned wanting to grab fresh produce before heading home. Victoria had offered to walk with him. It was casual, friendly, even. The kind of thing coworkers did when they didn't hate each other. Except Ryan had just called her his wife in front of strangers. And she'd gone quiet. He caught up to her near a flower stand where she'd stopped to examine a bundle of white lilies. Her fingers brushed the petals lightly, almost absently. "You okay?" He tried again. Victoria glanced at him, and for just a second, something flickered across her face, something that wasn't the icy composure she wore like armor. "I'm fine, Ryan." She wasn't, he could tell. But before he could push further, the sky opened up. Rain came down hard and sudden, the kind that soaked through clothes in seconds. People around them scattered, vendors scrambling to cover their goods. Ryan grabbed Victoria's arm without thinking and pulled her under the nearest awning, a narrow stretch of canvas over a closed bakery. They stood there, shoulders nearly touching, both breathing hard from the sudden sprint. Victoria's hair, usually pinned back in a perfect twist, had come slightly undone. A few strands stuck to her temple. Her blouse was damp, clinging to her shoulders. She looked different. Less like the untouchable executive he reported to every morning, and more like someone he might have met in a completely different context. Someone he might have noticed. "Hell of a day," Ryan said, trying to lighten the mood. Victoria didn't respond right away. She was staring out at the rain, her jaw tight. "You didn't have to say that," she said finally. Ryan frowned. "Say what?" "That I'm your wife." Her voice was quiet, but there was an edge to it. Not anger, something else. "I was just messing around," Ryan said carefully. "The guy was being nosy. I thought it'd be easier to—" "Easier," Victoria repeated, almost to herself. She let out a breath that might have been a laugh, but it didn't sound amused. "Right." Ryan studied her, confused. "Did I offend you or something?" She turned to look at him then, and the expression on her face made him stop cold. It wasn't offense. It was something raw, unguarded, vulnerable. "No," she said quietly. "You didn't offend me." The rain hammered against the awning above them. A car passed, spraying water across the curb. Neither of them moved. Then what's wrong? Ryan asked. Victoria hesitated. For someone who never hesitated, it was unnerving. I've been trying, she said slowly, very hard, to keep things professional between us. Ryan's chest tightened. Okay. And you just made that extremely difficult. He stared at her, not understanding. By calling you my wife? Yes. Victoria, I know you didn't mean it. Her voice cracked, just slightly. I know it was a joke, but it didn't feel like one. Ryan's pulse kicked up. What do you mean? She looked away, her fingers gripping the edge of her bag like she needed something to hold on to. I mean, she said quietly, that I've been watching you for months, watching you come into work exhausted because your daughter was up all night, watching you leave early to pick her up from school, watching you turn down promotions because you refused to sacrifice time with her. Ryan felt his throat go dry. And I've been trying, Victoria continued, her voice barely above a whisper, so hard not to care. The words hung between them, heavy and undeniable. Ryan didn't know what to say. Victoria Quinn, his boss, the woman who could command a room with a single sentence, who never let anyone see her sweat, was standing in front of him, drenched and unraveling, and admitting something he'd never once allowed himself to consider. I didn't know, he said finally. I made sure you didn't. She straightened, trying to pull herself back together, but it didn't quite work. Her walls were cracking, and Ryan could see every fracture. I'm sorry, she said, her voice steadier now. That was inappropriate. We should just… Don't, Ryan said. She stopped. Don't apologize. Victoria looked at him, her eyes searching his face. I'm not saying I don't feel something, Ryan said carefully. I'm just saying I didn't think you did. Well, Victoria said softly. Now you know. The rain showed no sign of letting up. Water pooled at the edge of the curb, rushing toward the storm drains. The market had emptied out almost entirely. Just a few stragglers huddled under makeshift shelters. Ryan ran a hand through his wet hair, trying to process what was happening. Victoria Quinn had feelings for him. His boss. The woman he'd spent 3 years trying to impress, trying to prove himself to, trying not to screw up in front of. And she'd been watching him the whole time. I don't know what to do with that, Ryan admitted. You don't have to do anything, Victoria said. I shouldn't have said it. When you called me your wife, She broke off, shaking her head. It doesn't matter. It does. She looked at him, surprised. It matters, Ryan said again. Because I wouldn't have said it if some part of me didn't mean it. Victoria's breath hitched. I've spent the last 3 years keeping my head down, Ryan continued. Working, raising Emma, trying to keep everything balanced. And yeah, I've noticed you. Of course I have. But I never let myself think about it because you're my boss, and I can't afford to mess this up. I can't afford to lose this job or complicate things or… I know, Victoria said quietly, but that doesn't mean I haven't thought about it. The admission hung between them, raw and unfiltered. Victoria took a slow breath, her shoulders dropping slightly. So what now? She asked. Ryan didn't have an answer. He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw someone he'd been too cautious to see before. Someone who'd been just as careful, just as guarded. Someone who'd been carrying something heavy for months and had finally set it down. I don't know, he said honestly. Victoria nodded, like she'd expected that. But I'm not sorry you told me, Ryan added. Her eyes met his, and for the first time since the market, she almost smiled. Neither am I. They stood there under the awning, the rain pouring down around them, and something shifted, not resolved, not fixed, but different. Ryan's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, saw a text from his neighbor, the one who watched Emma on weekends when he had to work late. Emma's asking when you're coming home. Want me to start dinner? Reality crashed back in. I have to go, Ryan said, pocketing the phone. Victoria nodded. Of course. He hesitated, then reached out and touched her arm lightly. We'll figure this out, he said. Will we? I don't know, but we're not going to pretend this didn't happen. Victoria studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Okay. Ryan stepped out into the rain, jogging toward the parking lot where he'd left his car. By the time he reached it, he was soaked through, water dripping from his hair, his shirt clinging to his back. He sat in the driver's seat, staring at the steering wheel, trying to process what had just happened. Victoria Quinn had feelings for him, and he'd just admitted he'd thought about her too. What the hell was he supposed to do with that? The drive home was a blur. Ryan's mind kept circling back to the market, to the way Victoria had looked at him under that awning, the way her voice had cracked when she'd said she'd been trying not to care. He pulled into the driveway of his small house on the edge of the city, the kind of place that was affordable because it needed work. The porch light was on, casting a warm glow over the front steps. Inside, Emma was curled up on the couch with a book, her dark hair pulled into a messy ponytail. She looked up when he came in, her face lighting up. "Dad! Hey, kiddo!" She scrambled off the couch and ran over, throwing her arms around his waist. Ryan hugged her back, feeling the tension in his chest ease slightly. "You're all wet," Emma said, wrinkling her nose. "Got caught in the rain. Did you get the peaches?" Ryan glanced at the counter where he'd set the basket Victoria had handed him. "Yeah, got 'em." Emma grinned and ran back to the couch, diving back into her book. Ryan's neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Dinner's almost ready," she said. "Chicken and rice." Emma helped. "Thanks, Maria. I owe you." "You don't owe me anything," she said, waving him off. "That girl's a sweetheart. We had fun." Ryan smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Maria gave him a look. "You okay?" "Yeah, long day." She didn't push, just patted his arm and headed for the door. "Call me if you need anything." "Will do." Once she was gone, Ryan stood in the middle of the living room, watching Emma read. She was 8 now, all skinny limbs and endless energy. She looked so much like her mother it hurt sometimes. Sarah had been gone for 4 years. 4 years since the accident. 4 years of Ryan figuring out how to be both parents at once. He'd gotten good at it, the routines, the schedules, the careful balancing act of work and home. He'd built a life that was stable, predictable, safe. And now Victoria Quinn had walked into it and turned everything sideways. "Dad?" Ryan blinked. Emma was looking at him, her head tilted. "You okay?" "Yeah, sweetheart. Just thinking." "About what?" Ryan hesitated. "Work stuff." Emma made a face. "Boring." He laughed. "Yeah, pretty boring." She went back to her book, and Ryan headed upstairs to change out of his wet clothes. In his room, he peeled off his shirt and tossed it into the hamper, then sat on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. He couldn't stop thinking about the way Victoria had looked at him, the way she'd said his name, the way she'd admitted she'd been trying not to care. Ryan had spent years keeping people at arm's length. It was easier that way, safer. He didn't have the energy for complications, for messy emotions, for anything that might destabilize the life he'd built for Emma. But Victoria wasn't a complication. She was something else. He didn't know what to call it yet. Monday morning came too fast. Ryan dropped Emma off at school, then sat in the parking lot for a full 5 minutes, staring at the steering wheel. He hadn't texted Victoria over the weekend, hadn't called, hadn't reached out at all. And she hadn't either. Part of him had hoped she would. Part of him was relieved she hadn't. By the time he pulled into the office parking lot, his stomach was in knots. The building was sleek and modern, all glass and steel. Ryan had worked here for 3 years, and he still felt a little out of place every time he walked through the doors. This was Victoria's world, sharp suits, corner offices, decisions that moved millions of dollars. Ryan was just a project manager, good at his job, sure, but not someone who belonged in the same orbit as someone like her. He took the elevator to the 3rd floor, walked past the rows of cubicles, and sat down at his desk. His phone buzzed. A calendar notification. Team meeting, 9 a.m., conference room B. Ryan's chest tightened. Victoria would be there. He grabbed his laptop and headed down the hall, trying to keep his expression neutral. The conference room was already half full when he arrived. A few coworkers were chatting near the coffee station. Ryan poured himself a cup and took a seat near the back. Victoria walked in exactly at 9. She was dressed in a charcoal gray suit, her hair pulled back in that same perfect twist. She looked every bit the executive she was, polished, composed, untouchable. Their eyes met for just a second. Ryan's pulse kicked up. Victoria's expression didn't change. She walked to the head of the table, set down her tablet, and started the meeting. "Good morning, everyone. Let's dive in." Her voice was steady, professional, not a hint of what had happened 2 days ago. Ryan tried to focus, but his mind kept drifting. He kept replaying the conversation under the awning, the way she'd looked at him, the way she'd admitted everything. And now she was acting like nothing had happened. The meeting dragged on, budget reviews, project timelines, client updates. Ryan barely heard any of it. Finally, Victoria wrapped up. "That's all for now. Let me know if you have questions." People started filing out. Ryan stood, grabbing his laptop. "Ryan." He froze. Victoria was still at the head of the table, her eyes on him. "Can you stay for a minute?" Ryan nodded. The last few people left and the door clicked shut behind them. Silence. Victoria didn't move. Neither did Ryan. "I'm not going to apologize for what I said," she said finally. "I didn't ask you to. But I need to know if this is going to be a problem." Ryan set his laptop down on the table. "A problem how?" "For you, for us, for work." He looked at her, standing there in her perfect suit, her perfect composure, and saw the cracks underneath. "I don't know yet," Ryan said honestly. Victoria nodded slowly. "Okay, but I'm not pretending it didn't happen." Her eyes softened, just slightly. "Neither am I." Ryan took a breath. "So what do we do?" Victoria walked around the table, stopping a few feet away from him. "We figure it out," she said quietly, "one step at a time." Ryan almost laughed. "That's not very specific." "I know." She looked at him, and for the first time since the market, the mask slipped. "I don't have all the answers, Ryan. I've been in control of every part of my life for as long as I can remember. And then you—" She broke off, shaking her head. "You made me feel something I wasn't prepared for." Ryan's chest ached. "I have a daughter," he said quietly, "and she's the most important thing in my life. I can't bring someone into her world unless I'm sure, unless I know it's real." "I understand." "Do you?" Victoria met his eyes. "Yes, because I wouldn't want you to do it any other way." The words settled between them, honest and fragile. Ryan took a step closer. "I need time," he said. "I know. But I'm not saying no." Victoria's breath caught. "Okay." They stood there, close enough that Ryan could see the faint lines at the corners of her eyes, the slight tension in her jaw. "This is a mess, Hecate," he said. "I know. And I have no idea how to do this." "Neither do I." Ryan almost smiled. "Great, we're both clueless." Victoria's lips twitched. Apparently, the tension broke, just slightly. Ryan stepped back, putting space between them before he did something stupid. "I should get back to work," he said. Victoria nodded. "Me too." He grabbed his laptop and headed for the door, but stopped with his hand on the handle. "Victoria?" She looked up. "Thank you for being honest." Her expression softened. "Thank you for listening." Ryan nodded and left, his heart pounding in his chest. The rest of the week was torture. Ryan saw Victoria in meetings, in passing in the hallways, once in the break room when he was refilling his coffee. Every time his stomach twisted. Every time she was perfectly professional. But there were moments. A glance that lasted a second too long. A smile that felt like it was just for him. A brief touch on his arm when she passed his desk. Small things. But they added up. By Friday, Ryan was wound so tight he could barely think straight. He picked Emma up from school and took her to the park, letting her burn off energy on the swings while he sat on a bench and tried to sort through his thoughts. "Dad, push me!" Ryan stood and walked over, giving the swing a gentle push. Emma laughed, her hair flying out behind her. "Higher!" Ryan pushed harder, watching her soar. "You're quiet today," Emma said, glancing back at him. "Just thinking." "About what?" Ryan hesitated. "Work stuff." Emma wrinkled her nose. "You think about work a lot." "I know." "Is it because of your boss?" Ryan's hands froze mid-push. Emma twisted around to look at him. What? Why would you say that? Ryan asked carefully. Emma shrugged. You talk about her sometimes, and you get this weird look on your face. Ryan's chest tightened. What kind of look? I don't know, like you're confused or something. Out of the mouths of 8-year-olds, Ryan gave the swing another push. She's just someone I work with. Do you like her? Emma? Because it's okay if you do. Ryan stopped the swing and crouched down in front of her, meeting her eyes. Why would you say that? Emma looked at him seriously. Because you're always alone, and I don't want you to be alone forever. Ryan's throat went tight. I'm not alone, he said softly. I have you. I know, but when I grow up, I'm going to leave, and then you'll be all by yourself. Ryan pulled her into a hug, his chest aching. You're 8, he said into her hair. You're not leaving anytime soon. Emma hugged him back. I'm just saying, it's okay if you like someone. Ryan closed his eyes, holding his daughter close, out of the mouths of 8-year-olds. That night, after Emma was asleep, Ryan sat on the couch with a beer he wasn't really drinking, staring at his phone. He'd pulled up Victoria's contact information 3 times and closed it 3 times. What was he supposed to say? Hey, my daughter says it's okay if I like you. Want to grab coffee? That was ridiculous. But Emma's words kept echoing in his head. It's okay if you like someone. Ryan set the phone down and rubbed his face. The truth was, he did like Victoria, more than he wanted to admit. More than was probably smart. But liking someone and being ready for something were 2 different things. His phone buzzed. Ryan picked it up, expecting a work email. It was a text. From Victoria. I know you need time. I'm not pushing, but I wanted you to know I'm still here. Ryan stared at the screen, his heart pounding. He typed a response, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. Finally, he just wrote, I know, thank you. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Good night, Ryan. Good night. Ryan set the phone down, exhaled slowly, and leaned back against the couch. He didn't have all the answers. He didn't know what came next. But for the first time in 4 years, he was starting to think that maybe, just maybe, it was okay not to have everything figured out. Maybe it was okay to let someone in, even if it scared the hell out of him. The following week felt like walking a tightrope. Ryan went to work, attended meetings, reviewed project timelines, had coffee with his team, all the normal things, except nothing felt normal anymore. Every time Victoria walked into a room, the air changed. Every time their eyes met across a conference table, something tightened in his chest. Every email she sent felt weighted with subtext he couldn't quite decode. And the worst part? No one else seemed to notice. To everyone else, they were just boss and employee, professional, cordial, nothing out of the ordinary. But Ryan felt like he was losing his mind. On Tuesday, Victoria stopped by his desk with a question about the Brennan account. She stood close enough that he could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive, and asked him to pull up a file. Her hand brushed his shoulder when she leaned in to look at the screen. It lasted maybe 3 seconds. Ryan didn't breathe the entire time. Thanks, Victoria said, straightening. Send that over when you get a chance. Sure. She walked away, heels clicking against the tile, and Ryan sat there staring at his monitor like an idiot. His coworker, Marcus, rolled his chair over from the next cubicle. You good, man? Ryan blinked. What? You look like you just saw a ghost. I'm fine. Marcus gave him a skeptical look but didn't push. If you say so. Ryan turned back to his computer and tried to focus, but his hands were shaking. This was getting out of control. He couldn't keep doing this, pretending everything was normal when his entire world had shifted off its axis. That night, after putting Emma to bed, Ryan sat on the back porch with his phone in his hand, staring at Victoria's last text. I'm still here. He typed out a message. Can we talk? Not at work. He stared at it for a full minute before hitting send. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. When? Ryan exhaled. Tomorrow night? After I put Emma to bed. Where? I don't know. Somewhere quiet. The dots appeared again, then stopped, then started again. There's a coffee shop on Maple. Open late. I'll be there at 8. Ryan's pulse kicked up. Okay. Okay. He set the phone down and ran both hands through his hair. What the hell was he doing? Wednesday dragged. Ryan barely slept the night before, and it showed. He messed up a presentation in the morning meeting, forgot an entire slide deck he was supposed to review. Victoria covered for him smoothly, redirecting the conversation like it was nothing, but Ryan saw the look she gave him afterward. Concern, not anger. That somehow made it worse. By the time he left the office, his nerves were shot. He picked Emma up from school, made dinner, helped her with homework, and read her 2 chapters of the book they were working through together. She fell asleep halfway through the second one, curled up against his side. Ryan carried her to bed, tucked her in, and stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching her breathe. She looked so small, so fragile, and she was counting on him to hold everything together. Ryan closed the door quietly and checked his watch. 7:30. He texted Mrs. Alvarez, who lived next door, and asked if she could come over for an hour. She replied immediately, "Be there in 5." Maria showed up with a bag of knitting and a knowing smile. "You going somewhere?" "Just need to take care of something." She gave him a look. "Uh-huh." "What?" "Nothing." She settled onto the couch and pulled out her yarn. "Go, I've got her." Ryan grabbed his jacket and headed out before he could talk himself out of it. The coffee shop on Maple was small and dimly lit, tucked between a bookstore and a dry cleaner. Ryan had never been inside before. He pushed through the door and scanned the room. Victoria was already there. She sat at a corner table near the back, her coat draped over the chair beside her. She'd changed out of her work suit and was wearing jeans and a simple black sweater. Her hair was down, falling in loose waves around her shoulders. Ryan had never seen her like this. She looked softer, more real. She glanced up and saw him, and something in her expression shifted. Relief, maybe. Ryan walked over and sat down across from her. "Hi," he said. "Hi." For a moment, neither of them spoke. A barista called out an order from behind the counter. Someone laughed near the front of the shop. The espresso machine hissed. "Thanks for coming," Ryan said finally. "Of course." He rubbed the back of his neck, trying to figure out where to start. "I've been thinking about what you said," he began. "At the market and after." Victoria nodded slowly. "Okay. And I don't know how to do this." "Do what?" "This." Ryan gestured between them. "Whatever this is." Victoria leaned back in her chair, her fingers wrapped around her cup. "You don't have to do anything," she said quietly. "I told you. I'm not pushing." "I know, but I can't just ignore it either." "Then don't." Ryan looked at her, frustration bubbling up. "It's not that simple." "Why not?" "Because you're my boss, Victoria. Because I have a daughter who depends on me. Because if this goes wrong, I lose everything." The words came out harsher than he intended. Victoria didn't flinch. "You're right," she said evenly. "You could lose everything. So could I." Ryan blinked. "What?" "You think I haven't thought about this?" Victoria set her cup down, her eyes meeting his. "You think I don't know what's at stake? I'm your boss, Ryan. If this gets out, people will assume I've been giving you special treatment. They'll question every decision I've made regarding you. My credibility, my reputation, it's all on the line." Ryan hadn't thought about it that way. "But I told you anyway," Victoria continued, her voice quieter now, "because I couldn't keep pretending I didn't feel it. And I'm not asking you to risk everything. I'm just asking you to be honest with me." Ryan swallowed hard. "About what?" "About whether you feel it too." The question hung between them, impossible to avoid. Ryan looked down at his hands, then back up at her. "I do," he said quietly. "I feel it." Victoria's breath caught. "But that doesn't mean I know what to do with it," Ryan added. "I haven't been with anyone since Sarah died. I haven't even thought about it. And now you—" He broke off, shaking his head. You're not someone I can just casually date. You're not someone I can keep separate from the rest of my life. If I do this, it's all in. And I don't know if I'm ready for that. Victoria reached across the table and placed her hand over his. The touch was warm, steady. Then don't be ready, she said. Just be honest. Ryan stared at her hand on his, feeling the weight of it. What if I screw this up? He asked. Then we'll figure it out. What if it hurts Emma? Victoria's grip tightened slightly. Then we stop, she said firmly. No question, no hesitation. If this ever becomes something that hurts her, we stop. Ryan looked up at her, searching her face. You mean that? Yes. He believed her. That was the terrifying part. He actually believed her. I need to go slow, Ryan said. Okay. And I need you to be patient. I can do that. And if at any point this feels wrong, we stop, Victoria repeated. I get it, Ryan. I'm not asking you to jump off a cliff. I'm just asking you to take a step. Ryan exhaled slowly, some of the tension in his chest easing. One step, he said. Victoria smiled, and it was the first real smile he'd seen from her in days. One step. They sat there for a while, just talking. Not about work, not about feelings, just life. Victoria told him about growing up in New York, about her parents' messy divorce, about the way she'd built her career from the ground up because she refused to rely on anyone else. Ryan told her about Sarah, about the accident, about the first year after when he didn't know if he'd survive it. It was the most honest conversation he'd had with anyone in years. And when Ryan finally glanced at his watch and realized it was almost 10, he was surprised by how much he didn't want to leave. I should get back, he said reluctantly. Maria's watching Emma. Victoria nodded. Of course. They stood, and Ryan hesitated. Thank you, he said, for this. Any time. They walked out together, stopping on the sidewalk outside. The street was quiet, just a few cars passing by. Good night, Ryan. Good night. Victoria turned to leave, but Ryan caught her hand. She stopped, looking back at him. One step, he said. She smiled. One step. Ryan let go, and she walked toward her car, her coat pulled tight against the evening chill. He stood there for a moment, watching her go, and felt something shift inside him. It wasn't certainty, but it was something. The next few weeks were different. Not easier, just different. Ryan and Victoria started texting more. Nothing heavy, just small things. A joke about a meeting that ran too long. A question about a project. A picture of Emma's latest art project that Ryan thought Victoria might find funny. She always responded. And slowly, carefully, they started spending more time together outside of work. Coffee before meetings. Lunch in the break room when the office was quiet. A walk through the park near the office one afternoon when they both needed air. It wasn't dating, not officially, but it was something, and people were starting to notice. Marcus cornered Ryan in the break room one Friday afternoon, leaning against the counter with his arms crossed. So, he said casually, you and Quinn. Ryan's stomach dropped. What about us? Come on, man, you think people haven't noticed? Noticed what? Marcus raised an eyebrow. You're joking, right? Ryan set his coffee down. We're just friends. Uh-huh. We are. Friends who have lunch together every day? We don't. Friends who leave meetings together? Marcus. Friends who look at each other like that? Ryan's jaw tightened. Like what? Marcus just shook his head, grinning. Man, I'm not judging. Good for you. She's way out of your league, but good for you. It's not like that. Sure it's not. Marcus clapped him on the shoulder and walked out, leaving Ryan standing there, his pulse racing. If Marcus had noticed, other people had too. That was a problem. Ryan pulled out his phone and texted Victoria. We need to be more careful. Her response came a minute later. I know. People are talking. Let them. Ryan stared at the screen, anxiety twisting in his gut. Easy for you to say. You're not the one they'll assume is sleeping his way up. The dots appeared, then stopped, then appeared again. You're right. I'm sorry. We'll be more careful. Ryan pocketed his phone and headed back to his desk, but the knot in his stomach didn't ease. This was getting complicated, and he didn't know how to uncomplicate it. That weekend, Emma had a soccer game. Ryan stood on the sidelines with the other parents, cheering as the kids ran up and down the field. Emma wasn't the best player on the team, but she was trying, and that was what mattered. Halfway through the second half, someone came and stood beside him. Ryan glanced over. Victoria. He froze. "What are you doing here?" he asked quietly. "You mentioned the game," Victoria said, her eyes on the field. "I thought I'd come watch." Ryan's heart hammered in his chest. "Victoria, this isn't— I know, but I wanted to see her play." Emma scored a goal, her first of the season, and the parents erupted in cheers. Ryan clapped, grinning, his chest swelling with pride. Emma looked over at the sidelines, beaming, and then her eyes landed on Victoria. Her smile faltered, just slightly, confused. After the game, Emma ran over, sweaty and flushed. "Did you see? Did you see?" "I saw!" Ryan scooped her up and spun her around. "That was amazing!" Emma laughed, then looked at Victoria, who was standing a few feet back. "Who's that?" Ryan set Emma down, his pulse kicking up. "This is Victoria," he said carefully. "She works with me." Emma tilted her head. "Why is she here?" "Good question." Victoria stepped forward, crouching down to Emma's level. "I heard you were playing today," she said gently. "Your dad talks about you a lot. I wanted to see for myself." Emma studied her, suspicious in that way only 8-year-olds could be. "You're his boss, right?" Victoria blinked, surprised. "Yes." "He talks about you too." Ryan felt his face heat. Victoria smiled. "Does he?" "Yeah, he gets all weird when he does." "Emma," Ryan said, mortified. But Victoria just laughed, a real, genuine laugh that made her whole face light up. "Well, she said, still smiling, "I think you played a great game." Emma shrugged, but she was smiling too. "Thanks." Victoria stood and looked at Ryan, something warm in her expression. "I should go," she said quietly. Ryan nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Victoria waved at Emma and walked toward the parking lot. Emma watched her go, then looked up at Ryan. "She's pretty." Ryan swallowed. "Yeah. Do you like her?" "Emma, because I think she likes you." Ryan crouched down, meeting his daughter's eyes. "Would that be okay?" he asked carefully. "If I liked her?" Emma thought about it for a moment, then nodded. "Yeah, I think so." Ryan's chest tightened. "Why?" "Because you smile more when you talk about her." Out of the mouths of 8-year-olds. Ryan pulled Emma into a hug, holding her close. "I love you, kiddo." "I love you too, Dad." They walked back to the car together, Emma chattering about the game, and Ryan felt something settle inside him. Maybe this wasn't as impossible as he thought. Maybe it was okay to let someone in. Maybe Emma was right. Maybe it was okay to smile again. That night, after Emma was asleep, Ryan sat on the couch and pulled out his phone. He texted Victoria, "Thank you for coming today." Her response came almost immediately. "Thank you for letting me. Emma liked you. She's a great kid." Ryan hesitated, then typed, "I think we should talk, really talk." The dots appeared. "Okay, when?" "Soon, I'll be ready." Ryan set the phone down and leaned back, exhaling slowly. He didn't have all the answers. He didn't know how this was going to work. But for the first time in 4 years, he was willing to try. And that felt like enough. The conversation Ryan had been planning didn't happen right away. Work got busy. The Brennan account hit a snag, and suddenly Ryan was pulling late nights, coordinating with vendors, putting out fires that seemed to multiply every time he turned around. Victoria was in back-to-back meetings with the executive team, strategizing damage control for a client who decided to pull funding at the last minute. They barely saw each other for a week. When they did cross paths, it was in passing, a nod in the hallway, a brief exchange in the elevator, professional, distant. It drove Ryan crazy. He'd finally decided he was ready to have the conversation, ready to figure out what this thing between them actually was, and now the universe had other plans. On Thursday night, he was at his desk at 7:30, reviewing contracts, when his phone buzzed. Victoria. Still there? Ryan glanced around. The office was mostly empty, just a few stragglers in the far cubicles. Yeah. You? My office. Come up? Ryan's pulse kicked up. He saved his work, grabbed his coffee, and took the elevator to the 5th floor. Victoria's office was at the end of the hall, corner view, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The door was open. Ryan knocked anyway. Come in. Victoria was sitting behind her desk, her jacket off, sleeves rolled up. She looked tired. There were files spread across every available surface, her laptop open to what looked like a dozen tabs. You okay? Ryan asked. Victoria glanced up and gave him a wry smile. Define okay. Ryan stepped inside and closed the door behind him. That bad? Dawson's threatening to walk. Says we're not delivering on our original pitch. She rubbed her temples. Which is bullshit, but he's got leverage, and he knows it. Ryan leaned against the edge of her desk. What do you need? A miracle. Victoria laughed, but it was hollow. Or at least a client who doesn't change his mind every 5 minutes. Well, want me to take a look? Victoria hesitated, then pushed one of the files toward him. If you have time. Ryan picked it up and skimmed through. The contract was a mess, full of amendments and addendums that contradicted each other. No wonder Dawson was pissed. This is fixable, Ryan said. Victoria looked up, surprised. Really? Yeah, we just need to clarify the deliverables. Pin down the timeline. Make sure everything's in writing so he can't backtrack later. Victoria stared at him for a moment, something shifting in her expression. What? Ryan asked. Nothing, just thank you. For what? For not saying I told you so. Ryan frowned. Why would I say that? Because I rushed this contract. I knew it wasn't tight enough, but I pushed it through anyway because I wanted to close the deal. She sighed. That's on me. Ryan set the file down. Everyone makes mistakes, Victoria. I don't. The words came out sharp, reflexive. Ryan raised an eyebrow. Ever? Victoria looked away. I can't afford to. There it was again, that crack in her armor. The thing Ryan kept glimpsing but never quite understood. He pulled a chair over and sat down across from her. What are you doing? Victoria asked. Sitting. I can see that. You look like you haven't eaten in 6 hours. When's the last time you took a break? Victoria glanced at her watch. I had lunch. When? Noon. Ryan checked his own watch. That was 8 hours ago. I'm fine. You're not. Victoria's jaw tightened. Ryan? Come on, we're getting food. I have work to do. And it'll still be here in an hour. Ryan stood and held out his hand. Come on. Victoria stared at his hand like it was a foreign object. I'm serious, Ryan said. You're running on fumes. Take a break. For a moment, he thought she was going to argue. But then she sighed, closed her laptop, and took his hand. Her fingers were cold. Ryan pulled her to her feet and they left the office together. The building was quiet at this hour. Most of the fluorescent lights dimmed for the night. They took the elevator down to the parking garage, and Ryan led her to his car. Where are we going? Victoria asked. You'll see. Ryan drove them to a small diner on the edge of the city, the kind of place that was open 24 hours and served breakfast all day. It wasn't fancy. The booths were cracked vinyl. The tables were formica, and the coffee tasted like it had been sitting in the pot since morning. But the food was good, and it was quiet. They slid into a booth near the back. A waitress came over, poured them coffee without asking, and took their orders. Victoria looked around, bemused. I don't think I've ever been here. Best pancakes in the city, Ryan said. Really? Really? Victoria picked up her coffee, took a sip, and made a face. Ryan laughed. Okay, the coffee's terrible, but the pancakes make up for it. Victoria set the cup down, a small smile tugging at her lips. If you say so. They sat in silence for a moment, the exhaustion settling over both of them like a weight. Thank you, Victoria said quietly. For what? For dragging me out of there. Ryan shrugged. You would have stayed all night. Probably. That's not healthy. Victoria looked at him, her expression unreadable. You're one to talk. What's that supposed to mean? You work just as hard as I do, Ryan. You just hide it better. Ryan didn't have a response to that. The food came, pancakes for Ryan, an omelet for Victoria. They ate in comfortable silence, the kind that only came with people who didn't need to fill every moment with conversation. Halfway through the meal, Victoria set down her fork and looked at him. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you come up to my office tonight? Ryan paused mid-bite. You asked me to. I know, but you could have said no. You had your own work to finish. Ryan set his fork down. I wanted to see you. The admission hung between them, simple and honest. Victoria's expression softened. I wanted to see you too. Ryan's chest tightened. This is getting harder, he said quietly. I know. Pretending at work, keeping everything separate. I know. Ryan leaned back in the booth, running a hand through his hair. I don't know how to do this, Victoria. I don't know how to keep my professional life and my personal life in separate boxes when you're in both of them. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Then maybe we stop trying, she said finally. Ryan looked at her, startled. What? Maybe we stop pretending this isn't happening. Maybe we stop acting like we can keep everything compartmentalized. You're my boss. I know. If people find out, they already suspect, Victoria said. Marcus isn't the only one who's noticed. Ryan's stomach dropped. Great. So we have two options, Victoria continued. We can keep pretending and drive ourselves crazy, or we can be honest about it. Honest how? Victoria met his eyes. I don't know yet, but I'm tired of pretending I don't care about you. Ryan's breath caught. I care about you too, he said quietly. But I have to think about Emma. I have to think about what this means for her. I know, and I would never ask you to choose between us. It's not about choosing. It's about making sure she's okay, making sure this is real before I bring you into her life. Victoria reached across the table and took his hand. Then let's make sure, she said. Let's figure out if this is real. Ryan looked down at their joined hands, feeling the weight of the decision settling over him. Okay, he said finally. Okay? Yeah, let's figure it out. Victoria smiled, and it was the first genuine smile Ryan had seen from her in days. They finished their meal, paid the check, and drove back to the office in silence. When Ryan pulled into the parking garage, Victoria didn't get out right away. Thank you, she said. For tonight. Any time. Victoria hesitated, then leaned over and kissed him on the cheek. It was brief, barely a brush of lips against skin, but it felt like everything. Ryan sat there, frozen, as Victoria got out of the car and walked to her own. He didn't move until her taillights disappeared up the ramp. Then he sat back, exhaled slowly, and tried to get his heart rate under control. This was real, this was happening, and he had no idea what came next. The following week, Ryan made a decision. He was going to introduce Victoria to Emma, properly. Not at a soccer game, not in passing, but in a way that mattered, in a way that let Emma see who Victoria actually was. He texted Victoria on Tuesday. Dinner at my place this weekend? I want you to meet Emma, for real this time. The response took a few minutes. Are you sure? No, but I think it's time. Okay, I'll be there, Ryan told Emma on Wednesday night while they were doing dishes. Victoria's coming over for dinner on Saturday. Emma looked up from the plate she was drying. Your boss? Yeah. Why? Ryan hesitated. Because I want you two to get to know each other. Emma frowned. Are you dating her? Ryan set down the dish he was washing and turned to face his daughter. I don't know yet, he said honestly, but I like her, and I want to see if it could be something more. Emma was quiet for a moment, processing. Is she going to be my new mom? Ryan's chest tightened. No, sweetheart. No one's replacing your mom. No one ever could. Then what is she? Ryan crouched down, meeting Emma's eyes. I don't know yet, he said again, But I want to find out, and I want you to be part of that. Because you're the most important person in my life. And if this is going to happen, I need to know you're okay with it. Emma thought about it, chewing on her bottom lip the way she always did when she was working through something complicated. Can I ask her questions? She said, finally. Ryan smiled. Yeah, you can ask her whatever you want. Even weird questions? Even weird questions. Emma nodded, seemingly satisfied. Okay. Ryan pulled her into a hug, relief washing over him. Thank you, kiddo. You're welcome. Saturday came faster than Ryan was ready for. He spent the afternoon cleaning the house, trying to make it look less like a disaster zone. Emma helped, mostly by rearranging her toys into what she claimed was a better system, but looked exactly the same to Ryan. He'd decided to keep dinner simple: pasta, salad, garlic bread. Nothing fancy. Nothing that would make this feel like more pressure than it already was. At 6:30, the doorbell rang. Ryan wiped his hands on a towel and went to answer it. Victoria stood on the porch, holding a bottle of wine and looking more nervous than he'd ever seen her. She'd dressed down, jeans, a simple blouse, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked beautiful. Hi, she said. Hi. They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. You okay? Ryan asked, terrified. Ryan laughed. Yeah, me too. He stepped aside and Victoria came in. Emma appeared in the hallway, watching from a distance. Victoria smiled at her. Hi, Emma. Hi. An awkward silence settled over the room. Ryan cleared his throat. Dinner's almost ready. You want something to drink? Sure. They moved into the kitchen. Ryan poured Victoria a glass of wine, and Emma climbed onto one of the bar stools, watching Victoria with open curiosity. You're really pretty, Emma said. Victoria blinked, caught off guard. Thank you. My dad talks about you a lot. Emma? Ryan said, mortified, but Victoria just laughed. Does he? Yeah, he says you're really smart. Well, your dad's pretty smart too. Emma tilted her head, considering. Are you going to be his girlfriend? Ryan nearly dropped the pan he was holding. Victoria, to her credit, didn't miss a beat. I don't know yet, she said honestly. We're still figuring that out. Do you like him? I do. Like, a lot? Victoria glanced at Ryan, her eyes warm. Yeah, a lot. Emma nodded, seemingly satisfied. Okay. Ryan exhaled slowly, trying to get his heart rate under control. Dinner was surprisingly easy after that. They ate at the small table in the kitchen, Emma chattering about school, about her soccer team, about the book she was reading. Victoria listened, asked questions, laughed in all the right places. She didn't try to be someone she wasn't. She didn't overdo it, didn't try too hard. She was just herself. And Emma responded to it. After dinner, Emma dragged Victoria into the living room to show her the elaborate Lego city she'd been building for weeks. Victoria sat on the floor asking questions, genuinely interested. Ryan stood in the doorway watching them and felt something settle deep in his chest. This could work. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy, but it could work. Later, after Emma had gone to bed, Ryan and Victoria sat on the back porch with their wine, the night air cool and quiet around them. She's amazing, Victoria said softly. She liked you. You think? I know. Victoria smiled, but there was something vulnerable in her expression. I was so nervous. I could tell. Was it that obvious? A little. Victoria laughed, shaking her head. I've given presentations to boards of directors. I've negotiated million-dollar deals, but sitting down to dinner with an 8-year-old? Terrifying. Ryan reached over and took her hand. You did great, he said. Victoria looked at him, and in the dim light from the kitchen, he could see the emotion in her eyes. I meant what I said, she said quietly. I like you. A lot. I like you too. So what now? Ryan thought about it for a moment. Now we take it one day at a time, he said. We figure it out as we go. Victoria nodded. I can do that. They sat there in silence, hands linked, the night stretching out around them. And for the first time in a long time, Ryan felt like maybe, just maybe, he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The next few weeks were careful dance. Ryan and Victoria started spending more time together outside of work. Coffee on Saturday mornings while Emma was at soccer practice. Dinner at the diner when they both worked late. Quiet evenings at Ryan's place after Emma had gone to bed. They didn't tell anyone at work, not yet, but it was getting harder to hide. People noticed the way Victoria smiled when Ryan walked into a meeting, the way Ryan's gaze tracked her across the room, the way they seemed to gravitate toward each other without even realizing it. Marcus cornered Ryan in the break room again, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. "You're together, aren't you?" Ryan didn't bother denying it this time. "Yeah, I knew it." "Congratulations." Marcus laughed. "Man, you've got guts, dating the boss." "It's not like that." "Sure it's not." Ryan sighed. "Are people talking?" "Of course they're talking. This is an office. People always talk." "Great." Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. "Don't sweat it. As long as you're not getting special treatment, no one cares." But Ryan knew it wasn't that simple, and so did Victoria. They were sitting in her office late one evening, reviewing a project proposal, when she brought it up. "We need to tell HR," she said. Ryan looked up from the file he was reading. "What?" "About us. We need to disclose the relationship." Ryan's stomach twisted. "Are you sure?" "We don't have a choice, Ryan. If someone finds out and we haven't disclosed it, it looks like we're hiding something. It undermines both of our credibility. But if we tell them, then it's out in the open, and we deal with whatever comes next." Ryan set the file down. "What if they make you transfer me or fire one of us?" "They won't. You don't know that." Victoria met his eyes. "You're right. I don't. But I'd rather deal with it honestly than wait for it to blow up in our faces." Ryan knew she was right, but that didn't make it any easier. "Okay," he said finally. "Let's do it." Victoria nodded, and Ryan could see the tension in her shoulders ease slightly. They met with HR the following week. It was every bit as awkward as Ryan had feared. The HR director, a woman named Patricia, who'd been with the company for 20 years, listened to their explanation with a neutral expression. "So you're saying this relationship started after Ryan became your direct report?" she asked. "Yes," Victoria said. "And you're disclosing it now because you want to remain in compliance with company policy?" "Yes." Patricia made a note on her tablet. "Have there been any instances where this relationship has affected your professional judgment?" "No," Victoria said firmly. "Ryan?" Ryan shook his head. "No, never." Patricia studied them both for a long moment. "I appreciate your honesty," she said finally, "and I understand these situations happen, but you need to understand the position this puts the company in." Ryan's chest tightened. "What position?" Victoria asked. "If there's ever a perception that Ryan is receiving preferential treatment, it reflects poorly on both of you, and on the company." "I understand," Victoria said. "So moving forward, Ryan will need to report to someone else. We'll reassign him to a different team." Ryan felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. "Wait," he said. "That's not—" "It's standard procedure," Patricia said. "We can't have a direct supervisor in a relationship with their subordinate. It's a conflict of interest." Victoria's jaw tightened. "I understand the policy, but Ryan is one of my best project managers. Moving him will disrupt multiple ongoing projects. We'll manage the transition carefully." "Patricia, this isn't negotiable," Victoria. The words were final. Ryan and Victoria left the office in silence. They didn't speak until they were in the parking garage, standing next to Ryan's car. "I'm sorry," Victoria said quietly. "It's not your fault. It feels like it is." Ryan leaned against the car, trying to process what had just happened. He was being reassigned, moved to a different team, all because he'd fallen for his boss. "Maybe this was a mistake," he said. Victoria's head snapped up. "What?" "Maybe we shouldn't have—" "Don't, Victoria said sharply. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Regret this." Ryan looked at her and saw the fear in her eyes. "I don't regret it," he said, "but I don't know if it's worth it." "Worth what?" Losing my job, losing everything I've built. Victoria stepped closer, her eyes locked on his. You're not losing anything, she said. You're being reassigned. That's it. You're still with the company. You're still doing what you're good at. But I won't be working with you. No, you won't. The words hung between them, heavy and painful. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, frustration bubbling up. This is exactly what I was afraid of, he said. This is why I didn't want to do this in the first place. I know. So what do we do now? Victoria reached up and cupped his face in her hands. We keep going, she said firmly. We don't give up just because it's hard. Ryan wanted to believe her. But right now, standing in a cold parking garage, everything felt impossible. I need to think, he said. Victoria's hands dropped. Okay, she said quietly. Take all the time you need. Ryan got in his car and drove home, his mind racing. When he got there, Emma was already in bed, and the house was dark and quiet. Ryan sat on the couch, staring at nothing, trying to figure out what the hell he was supposed to do. He'd taken a risk. He'd let someone in, and now he was paying the price. Ryan didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation with Patricia over and over. The reassignment. The implications. The way Victoria's face had looked when he'd said maybe this was a mistake. He hadn't meant it. Not really. But the words had come out anyway, born from fear and frustration and the overwhelming sense that he was losing control of everything he'd worked so hard to build. By morning, he felt like hell. Emma noticed at breakfast. She always noticed. You look tired, she said, pouring cereal into her bowl. Didn't sleep well. How come? Ryan stirred his coffee, avoiding her eyes. Just thinking about work stuff. Emma frowned. Is it because of Victoria? Ryan's hand froze. What? You've been weird since she came over for dinner. Did you guys have a fight? No, nothing like that. Then what? Ryan set his mug down and looked at his daughter. She was watching him with those sharp, observant eyes that missed nothing. It's complicated, he said finally. Because she's your boss? Yeah. Emma thought about that for a moment, chewing her cereal. Are you going to stop seeing her? The question hit Ryan harder than it should have. I don't know, he admitted. Emma's expression turned serious. Do you want to? No. Then don't. Ryan almost laughed. It's not that simple, kiddo. Why not? Because there are rules at work, and sometimes those rules make things harder. Emma shrugged. Then change the rules. I can't just... If the rules are dumb, you should change them. Ryan stared at his 8-year-old daughter, struck by the simple clarity of her logic. If the rules are dumb, change them. If only it were that easy. But maybe Emma had a point. Maybe he'd been so focused on following the rules, on protecting what he had, that he'd forgotten to ask himself what he actually wanted. And what he wanted was Victoria. Not despite the complications, not in spite of the risk, just her. Ryan reached across the table and ruffled Emma's hair. When did you get so smart? Emma grinned. I was born this way. Ryan dropped Emma off at school and drove to work with his mind clearer than it had been in days. He found Victoria in her office, already buried in paperwork. She looked up when he knocked, and something guarded crossed her face. Hey, she said carefully. Ryan closed the door behind him and sat down across from her. I'm sorry, he said. Victoria set her pen down. For what? For what I said yesterday, about this being a mistake. Ryan, I didn't mean it. I was scared and I said something stupid. Victoria was quiet for a moment, her fingers tracing the edge of a folder. I was scared too, she admitted. Yeah? Yeah. She looked up at him. I thought maybe you'd realize this wasn't worth it, that I wasn't worth it. Ryan's chest tightened. That's not even close to true. Then what are we doing? Ryan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. We're figuring it out, he said. One day at a time, like we said. Even with the reassignment. Victoria exhaled slowly, and some of the tension left her shoulders. Okay, she said. Okay. They sat there for a moment, just looking at each other, and Ryan felt something shift back into place. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Victoria glanced at her computer screen, then back at him. I pulled some strings. Ryan frowned. What kind of strings? You're being reassigned to David Chen's team. He's good, fair, and he won't ask questions. You didn't have to do that. I know, but I wanted to make sure you landed somewhere decent. Ryan felt a surge of gratitude. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You still have to deal with the transition. When does it start? Next week. Ryan nodded. It was fast, but that was probably for the best. Rip the bandage off. And what about us? He asked. Victoria's expression softened. What about us? We're still doing this, right? Even with me on a different team. Do you want to? Yeah, I do. Victoria smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through clouds. Then we're still doing this. Ryan stood feeling lighter than he had in days. He reached the door, then turned back. Victoria? Yeah? Emma told me this morning that if the rules are dumb, we should change them. Victoria laughed. Smart kid. She has her moments. Ryan left the office and headed back to his desk, feeling like maybe, just maybe, things were going to work out after all. The transition to David Chen's team was smoother than Ryan expected. David was in his mid-40s, calm and methodical, with a reputation for being one of the best managers in the company. He welcomed Ryan without any awkwardness, gave him a rundown of the current projects, and made it clear he didn't care about office politics. I heard you're dating Quinn, David said casually during their first one-on-one. Ryan's stomach dropped. Relax. I don't care. As long as you do your job and don't drag personal drama into my team, we're good. Ryan exhaled. Fair enough. Good. Now, let's talk about the Morrison account. It was exactly what Ryan needed. A clean slate, no judgment, just work. But not working directly with Victoria was harder than he'd anticipated. He saw her in meetings and passing in the hallways, occasionally in the break room, but they didn't have the daily interactions they used to. No quick check-ins about projects, no casual conversations over coffee. It felt like a piece of his routine had been carved out. They made up for it outside of work. Victoria started coming over more often, sometimes for dinner with Emma, sometimes just to sit on the couch and talk after Emma had gone to bed. Emma warmed up to her quickly. She'd ask Victoria about her job, about where she grew up, about whether she liked pizza with pineapple on it. Victoria answered every question with patience and honesty, never talking down to her, never pretending to be something she wasn't. One Saturday afternoon, Ryan came home from running errands to find Victoria and Emma sitting on the living room floor, building a Lego castle together. Where's the turret piece? Emma asked, digging through the pile. I think you used it on the east wall. Oh, right. Ryan stood in the doorway, watching them, and felt something warm settle in his chest. This was what he'd been afraid to hope for. Not perfection, not some fantasy version of a blended family, just this. Simple moments, laughter, connection. Victoria looked up and saw him watching. She smiled, and Ryan smiled back. Later, after Emma had gone to bed, they sat on the back porch with glasses of wine. She's amazing, Victoria said softly. She likes you. I like her too. Ryan reached over and took her hand. This is working. Victoria looked at him, her eyes searching his face. Yeah? Yeah. She squeezed his hand. I was worried it wouldn't. Me too. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the night air cool around them. Can I ask you something? Victoria said eventually. Sure. What was Sarah like? Ryan tensed slightly. He didn't talk about Sarah often. It was too hard, too painful. But Victoria wasn't asking out of idle curiosity. She was asking because she wanted to understand. She was kind, Ryan said quietly, patient. She could make anyone feel like they mattered. Victoria was quiet, listening. She loved being a mom, Ryan continued. She was good at it, better than I ever was. When she died, I didn't know if I could do it alone. But you did. I didn't have a choice. Victoria's grip on his hand tightened. You're a good dad, Ryan. I'm trying. You're more than trying. Ryan looked at her, seeing the sincerity in her eyes. "Thank you," he said. Victoria leaned her head against his shoulder, and they sat there under the stars, the quiet stretching out around them. Ryan didn't know what the future held, but right now, in this moment, he was exactly where he wanted to be. At work, things started to settle into a new rhythm. Ryan threw himself into his projects, proving to David and to himself that the reassignment hadn't been a setback. He was good at his job. He didn't need Victoria's oversight to succeed, but he missed working with her, missed the way she'd challenge his ideas, push him to think differently, trust him with the big decisions. David was a good manager, but he wasn't Victoria. One afternoon, Ryan was in the break room refilling his coffee when Marcus appeared beside him. "How's it going with Chen?" Marcus asked. "Good. He's solid." "Miss working with Quinn?" Ryan gave him a look. "You're nosy, you know that?" Marcus grinned. "Part of my charm." "Debatable." "Come on, you can tell me. How's it going? The whole dating your former boss thing." Ryan hesitated, then shrugged. "It's good. Different, but good." "People are still talking, you know." Ryan's stomach tightened. "About what?" "About whether she gave you special treatment, whether you deserved the projects you got." Ryan's jaw clenched. "I earned every project I worked on." "I know that. You know that. But people love to speculate. Let them." Marcus studied him for a moment. "You really care about her, don't you?" Ryan met his eyes. "Yeah, I do." Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. "Then screw what people think." Ryan laughed, some of the tension easing. Easier said than done. True, but still. Ryan carried that conversation with him for the rest of the day. People were talking. Of course they were. But maybe Marcus was right. Maybe it didn't matter what they said. What mattered was the truth. And the truth was that Ryan had worked his ass off for everything he'd accomplished. Victoria hadn't handed him anything. She'd pushed him, challenged him, held him to a higher standard than anyone else. If people wanted to believe otherwise, that was their problem. That evening, Ryan met Victoria for dinner at the diner. It had become their spot, the place they went when they needed to escape the office, when they needed to just be themselves. Victoria was already there when he arrived, sitting in their usual booth near the back. "Hey," Ryan said, sliding in across from her. "Hey." She looked tired. There were shadows under her eyes, and her shoulders were tense. "Rough day?" Ryan asked. "You could say that." "What happened?" Victoria sighed. "Dawson's still being difficult. And now he's threatening to sue if we don't renegotiate the contract." "He can't do that." "He can try." Ryan frowned. "What do you need?" "Honestly, a drink and a burger." Ryan flagged down the waitress and ordered for both of them. When the food came, Victoria picked at her fries, not really eating. "You okay?" Ryan asked. "I'm fine." "Victoria." She looked up at him. "I'm just tired." "Of Dawson?" "Of everything." Ryan set down his burger. "Talk to me." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. "Do you ever feel like you're constantly fighting?" she said finally. "Like no matter how hard you work, no matter what you accomplish, it's never enough?" "All the time. I've spent my entire career proving myself, proving I'm smart enough, tough enough, capable enough. And I thought once I made it to the top, it would get easier. But it didn't. No, it just got lonelier." Ryan reached across the table and took her hand. "You're not alone anymore," he said quietly. Victoria's eyes glistened. "I know, and that scares me." "Why?" "Because I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to let someone in and still be good at my job. I don't know how to be vulnerable and strong at the same time." Ryan squeezed her hand. "You don't have to choose." "Don't I?" "No, you can be both. You already are." Victoria looked at him, and a tear slipped down her cheek. Ryan stood, slid into the booth beside her, and pulled her into his arms. She buried her face in his shoulder, and he held her while she cried. The waitress passed by, glanced at them, and quietly moved to a different section. After a while, Victoria pulled back, wiping her eyes. "Sorry," she said, her voice rough. "Don't apologize. I just I don't usually fall apart like that. Everyone falls apart sometimes. Victoria gave him a watery smile. Even you? Especially me. She laughed softly and leaned her head against his shoulder. They sat like that for a long time, the diner humming quietly around them. Thank you, so Victoria said eventually. For what? For being here. For not running when things get messy. Ryan kissed the top of her head. I'm not going anywhere. Promise? Promise. They finished their dinner in comfortable silence, the weight of the day slowly lifting. When they left the diner, the night was clear and cold, the stars bright overhead. Victoria walked Ryan to his car, and they stood there for a moment, neither of them wanting to say goodbye. Come over tomorrow? Ryan asked. Yeah? Yeah, Emma's been asking when you're coming back. Victoria smiled. Okay. Ryan leaned in and kissed her. It was soft, unhurried, the kind of kiss that said everything words couldn't. When they pulled apart, Victoria's eyes were bright. Good night, Ryan. Good night. Ryan got in his car and drove home, feeling lighter than he had in weeks. This was messy. This was complicated. But it was real. And that was enough. The next few weeks passed in a blur of work and stolen moments. Ryan settled into his new role on David's team, tackling projects with renewed focus. Victoria navigated the Dawson crisis, eventually hammering out a revised contract that satisfied both parties. They saw each other when they could. Dinners at Ryan's place, late-night phone calls after Emma had gone to bed, quiet mornings at the coffee shop before work. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. One Saturday morning, Ryan was making breakfast when Emma appeared in the kitchen, still in her pajamas. Can Victoria come to my birthday party? She asked. Ryan looked up from the stove. You want her there? Yeah, she's my friend. Ryan felt his chest tighten. Okay, I'll ask her. Emma grinned and ran back to her room. Ryan pulled out his phone and texted Victoria. Emma wants you at her birthday party next weekend. You in? The response came almost immediately. Absolutely. What time? 2 p.m. Fair warning, there will be cake, 8-year-olds, and chaos. Sounds perfect. Ryan smiled and slipped the phone back into his pocket. The party was exactly as chaotic as Ryan had predicted. 12 kids running around the backyard, playing games, screaming at decibel levels that should have been illegal. Ryan and Mrs. Alvarez did their best to maintain order, but it was a losing battle. Victoria arrived right on time, carrying a wrapped present and looking slightly overwhelmed. Emma ran over immediately. You came! Of course I came! Emma grabbed her hand and dragged her toward the backyard. Come on! We're about to play Capture the Flag! Ryan watched from the kitchen window as Victoria got pulled into the game, looking completely out of her element but trying anyway. She was terrible at it, but she was laughing, and Emma was having the time of her life. Later, after the kids had demolished the cake, and most of the guests had left, Victoria helped Ryan clean up. That was insane, she said, tying off a trash bag. Welcome to 8-year-old birthday parties. I don't know how you do this. Ryan laughed. Practice. Victoria looked at him, and there was something soft in her expression. You're really good at this, you know. At what? Being a dad. Ryan felt his throat tighten. Thanks. Emma appeared in the doorway, still riding the sugar high from the cake. Can Victoria stay for dinner? Ryan looked at Victoria. You up for it? Sure. Emma cheered and ran off. They ordered pizza and ate in the living room. Emma sprawled on the floor with her new toys, Ryan and Victoria on the couch. It felt easy, natural, like this was how it was supposed to be. After Emma went to bed, Ryan and Victoria stayed up talking, the house quiet around them. I have to tell you something, Victoria said eventually. Ryan looked at her, his pulse quickening. Okay. I got offered a promotion. Ryan's heart sank. Where? New York, regional director. The words hit like a punch to the gut. When? Ryan asked, his voice tight. They want me to start in 3 months. Ryan stared at her, trying to process. 3 months. Are you going to take it? He asked. Victoria looked at him, and there were tears in her eyes. I don't know, she said quietly. Because if I do, I lose this. I lose you. Ryan's chest ached. You can't turn it down because of me. Why not? Because this is your career. This is everything you've worked for. You're everything I've worked for, too. Ryan pulled her into his arms, holding her close. We'll figure it out, he said, even though he had no idea how. Victoria buried her face in his shoulder, and they sat there in the quiet, both of them terrified of what came next. Ryan didn't sleep that night either. He lay awake staring at the ceiling, Victoria's words echoing in his head. New York. Regional director. 3 months. It was the kind of opportunity people spent their entire careers chasing, the kind of thing you didn't turn down. And Victoria was considering it because of him. The thought made Ryan's stomach twist. He'd never wanted to be the reason someone gave up their dreams. He'd watched Sarah sacrifice pieces of herself to make their life work, watched her set aside her own ambitions to focus on Emma, and he'd promised himself he'd never ask that of anyone else. But he hadn't asked. Victoria was offering, and that somehow made it worse. By morning, Ryan felt hollowed out. He made breakfast on autopilot, barely registering Emma's chatter about some project at school. When he dropped her off, she looked back at him with concern. You okay, Dad? Yeah, sweetheart, just tired. You're always tired lately. Ryan forced a smile. I'm fine. Have a good day. Emma didn't look convinced, but she grabbed her backpack and headed inside. Ryan sat in the parking lot for a long moment before driving to work. He needed to talk to Victoria, needed to figure out what the hell they were going to do. But when he got to the office, Victoria was already in back-to-back meetings. He saw her briefly in the hallway around noon, and she gave him a look that said they'd talk later. Later came at 6 p.m. when Victoria texted him, Can you come over tonight after Emma's asleep? Yeah. Ryan went through the motions of dinner and homework and bedtime stories. Emma fell asleep halfway through the second chapter, and Ryan sat there for a few extra minutes, watching her breathe. She looked so peaceful, so safe. And Ryan had no idea how to tell her that their life might be about to change again. He texted Mrs. Alvarez, who agreed to sit with Emma, and drove to Victoria's apartment. She lived in a high-rise downtown, the kind of place with a doorman and marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. Ryan had only been there a handful of times. It felt like her, polished, controlled, expensive. Victoria answered the door in jeans and a sweater, her hair down, her face bare of makeup. She looked younger like this, more vulnerable. Hey, she said. Hey. She stepped aside and Ryan came in. The apartment was immaculate, decorated in neutral tones with modern furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine. There were no personal touches, no photos on the walls, no clutter. It looked like a hotel room. Victoria poured them both wine and they sat on the couch, the silence heavy between them. I've been thinking about the offer, Victoria said finally. Ryan's chest tightened. And I don't know what to do. What do you want to do? Victoria set her glass down and looked at him. Honestly, I want both. I wanted the promotion, and I want you. You can't have both. I know. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, frustration bubbling up. So what are you asking me? I'm asking what you want. What I want? Ryan stood, pacing across the room. I want you to take the job, Victoria. I want you to go to New York and be amazing and not look back. Victoria's face crumpled. Ryan, because I can't be the reason you give this up. I won't. You're not asking me to give it up, but I would be, just by existing, just by being here. Ryan turned to face her. You deserve this. You've worked your entire life for this, and I'm not going to be the guy who holds you back. Victoria stood, crossing the room to him. You're not holding me back, aren't I? No. You're the first person who's ever made me want something more than work. The words hung between them, raw and honest. Ryan looked at her and saw everything he felt reflected in her eyes. I love you, Victoria said quietly. Ryan's breath caught. I know I haven't said it before, she continued. I know this is probably terrible timing, but I need you to know I love you, Ryan, and I don't want to lose you. Ryan closed the distance between them and kissed her. It was desperate and aching and full of everything he couldn't put into words. When they pulled apart, Ryan rested his forehead against hers. "I love you too," he said, "and that's why you have to take the job." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "I can't." "Yes, you can. Not without you." Ryan pulled back, looking at her. "Then come with me." The words were out before Ryan could think them through. Victoria stared at him. "What?" "Come to New York, both of us, Emma and me." "Ryan, you can't just uproot your life." "Why not? You were going to." "That's different." "How?" Victoria opened her mouth, then closed it. "Emma, her school, her friends, your job." "Emma's 8. She'll make new friends, and I can find another job." "In New York?" "Why not? I'm good at what I do." Victoria shook her head. "I can't ask you to do that." "You're not asking. I'm offering." "Ryan, listen to me." Ryan took her hands. "I spent 4 years building a life that was safe, predictable, and it worked. But it was also lonely, and then you came along and turned everything upside down. And yeah, it's been messy and complicated and terrifying. But it's also been the best thing that's happened to me in years." Victoria's tears spilled over. "You really mean that?" "Yeah, I do." "But what if it doesn't work? What if we get to New York and everything falls apart?" "Then we'll figure it out, like we always do." Victoria let out a shaky laugh. "You're insane." "Probably." She kissed him again, softer this time. "I need to think about this," she said when they pulled apart. "Okay." "And you need to talk to Emma." Ryan's stomach twisted. "I know." "Don't make any promises until you're sure." "I'm sure." Victoria searched his face. "Are you?" Ryan thought about it, really thought about it. Leaving the city would mean leaving the house he'd shared with Sarah, the neighborhood where Emma had grown up, the routines they'd built together, but it would also mean a fresh start, a chance to build something new, with Victoria. "Yeah," Ryan said finally, "I'm sure." Victoria exhaled slowly, and some of the tension left her shoulders. "Okay," she said, "let's see if we can actually pull this off." The next morning, Ryan sat Emma down before school. "I need to talk to you about something," he said. Emma looked up from her cereal. "What?" "Victoria got offered a new job in New York." Emma's eyes widened. "Is she leaving?" "Maybe, and I wanted to know how you'd feel about going with her." Emma set down her spoon. "Like moving?" "Yeah." "To New York?" "Yeah." Emma was quiet for a long moment, processing. "Would we live with Victoria?" she asked finally. "I don't know yet. Maybe. Or maybe we'd find our own place nearby." "What about my school?" "You'd go to a new school, make new friends." Emma frowned. "I like my friends here." "I know, and we can visit, but this would be a big change." "Why do we have to go?" Ryan took a breath. "Because I love Victoria, and I want to be with her, but I need to know if you're okay with that." Emma looked down at her hands. "What if I'm not?" Ryan's chest tightened. "Then we don't go." Emma looked up at him, surprised. "Really? Really? You're the most important person in my life, Em. If you're not okay with this, we stay." Emma thought about it, her face serious. "Do you really love her?" she asked. "Yeah, I do." "Like you loved Mom?" Ryan felt his throat close up. "It's different, but yeah, I really love her." Emma nodded slowly. "And she makes you happy?" "Yes, Okay." Ryan blinked. "Okay? Yeah, we can go. Are you sure?" Emma shrugged. "I mean, it'll be weird, but you were sad for a long time after Mom died, and you're not sad anymore. So if Victoria makes you happy, then it's okay." Ryan pulled her into a hug, his eyes stinging. "Thank you, sweetheart." Emma hugged him back. "Can I have a bedroom with windows?" Ryan laughed, the sound rough. "Yeah, you can have a bedroom with windows." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Victoria accepted the promotion. Ryan gave his notice at work, and David wished him well without judgment. They started looking at apartments in New York, scrolling through listings late at night, trying to find something that felt right. It was terrifying and exhilarating and completely insane. But it was happening. Ryan told Mrs. Alvarez first. She cried and hugged him and made him promise to call every week. Marcus threw him a goodbye lunch at the office, and half the team showed up. Even Patricia from HR came by to wish him well. "You're doing the right thing," she said quietly. Ryan wasn't sure if she meant the move or the relationship, but he nodded anyway. The hardest part was packing up the house. Ryan stood in the living room, surrounded by boxes, and felt the weight of what he was leaving behind. This was the house where Emma had taken her first steps, where Sarah had hung Christmas lights every year, where Ryan had learned how to be a single father. It was full of memories, but it was also just a house. And the life he was building with Victoria? That was real. Emma wandered in, holding one of her stuffed animals. "You okay, Dad?" "Yeah, just thinking." "About Mom?" Ryan nodded. "A little." Emma came over and leaned against him. "Do you think she'd be okay with this?" Ryan wrapped an arm around her. "I think she'd want me to be happy." "Then she'd be okay with it." Ryan kissed the top of her head. "Yeah, I think she would." The day they left was gray and drizzly. Ryan loaded the last of the boxes into the moving truck, then stood on the porch one final time, looking at the house. Victoria came up beside him, slipping her hand into his. "You ready?" she asked. Ryan took a breath. "Yeah, I think I am." They drove to New York in 2 cars, Ryan and Emma in his, Victoria in hers. The drive took 6 hours, and Emma talked the entire time, asking questions about the city, about her new school, about whether they'd be able to see the Statue of Liberty from their apartment. Ryan answered as best he could, but his mind kept drifting. He was leaving everything he knew, and he was terrified. But he was also hopeful. Maybe that was enough. They arrived at the new apartment just after sunset. It was smaller than the house, but it had 3 bedrooms, big windows, and a view of the skyline that made Emma's eyes go wide. "Whoa," she breathed. Victoria smiled. "You like it?" "It's so cool." The movers arrived the next day, and they spent the weekend unpacking. Ryan set up Emma's room first, making sure she had her bed, her books, her stuffed animals. Victoria helped, assembling furniture and hanging pictures, and Emma directed them both like a tiny general. By Sunday night, the apartment was starting to feel like home. They ordered takeout and ate on the floor, surrounded by half-empty boxes, and Ryan felt something settle in his chest. This was going to work. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But it was real. Victoria started her new job the following Monday, and Ryan threw himself into the job search. He had interviews lined up, leads to follow, contacts to reach out to. Emma started school the week after, and Ryan walked her to the building that first day, his stomach in knots. "You're going to be great," he told her. Emma looked up at him, her backpack almost as big as she was. "What if no one likes me?" "They'll like you. You're smart and funny and kind. How could they not?" Emma took a breath. "Okay." Ryan watched her walk through the doors and felt his heart twist. She was so brave, braver than he'd ever been. That night, Victoria came home to find Ryan sitting on the couch, staring at nothing. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah, just thinking." Victoria sat down beside him. "About?" "About how I have no idea what I'm doing." Victoria smiled. "Welcome to the club." Ryan laughed. "You always seem like you know what you're doing. That's just good acting." "Really? Really?" Victoria leaned her head on his shoulder. "I'm terrified most of the time." "Of what?" "Of screwing this up, of not being good enough, of losing you." Ryan turned to look at her. "You're not going to lose me. Promise?" "Promise." Victoria kissed him, and Ryan pulled her closer, feeling the last of the tension drain away. This was messy. This was imperfect. But it was theirs. 3 months later, Ryan had settled into a new job at a marketing firm in Midtown. Emma had made friends at school and joined the soccer team. Victoria was thriving in her new role, leading a team twice the size of her old one. And the 3 of them had found a rhythm. Dinner together most nights, weekends exploring the city, quiet evenings at home, Emma doing homework at the kitchen table while Ryan and Victoria cooked. It wasn't the life Ryan had planned, but it was better. One Saturday morning, Ryan woke up to the smell of pancakes. He wandered into the kitchen to find Victoria and Emma at the stove, both of them laughing at some private joke. "What's going on?" Ryan asked. Emma turned, grinning. "We're making breakfast." "I can see that." Victoria flipped a pancake with more confidence than Ryan had expected. "Emma's teaching me." "She's not very good," Emma Stage whispered. "I heard that," Victoria said, but she was smiling. Ryan leaned against the doorway, watching them, and felt his chest tighten. This was what he'd been afraid to hope for, not a replacement for what he'd lost, but something new, something real. After breakfast, they took the subway to Central Park. Emma ran ahead, chasing pigeons, while Ryan and Victoria walked hand in hand. "She's happy," Victoria said quietly. "Yeah, she is." "Are you?" Ryan looked at her. "Yeah, I really am." Victoria smiled, and Ryan pulled her close. They spent the afternoon wandering through the park, Emma leading them from one adventure to the next. When they finally headed home, the sun was setting, painting the city in shades of gold and pink. That night, after Emma had gone to bed, Ryan and Victoria sat on the couch with glasses of wine. "I've been thinking," Victoria said. About us. About the future." Ryan's pulse kicked up. "Okay." Victoria set down her glass and turned to face him. "I know we haven't talked about this, and I don't want to rush anything, but I need to know if you see a future here. With me, long term." Ryan took her hand. "I'm here, aren't I?" "I know, but is this just for now, or is this forever?" Ryan thought about it, really thought about it. A year ago, he never would have imagined this. Moving to a new city, starting over, building a life with someone new. But here he was, and he didn't regret it. "I want it to be forever," Ryan said quietly. Victoria's breath caught. "Yeah?" "Yeah." She kissed him, and it felt like a promise. When they pulled apart, Victoria was smiling through tears. "I love you," she said. "I love you too." They sat there in the quiet, the city lights twinkling outside the window, and Ryan felt something settle deep in his chest. This was home. Not the apartment, not the city. This, the three of them together. A few weeks later, Ryan came home from work to find Emma sitting at the kitchen table drawing. "Hey kiddo, what are you working on?" Emma held up the picture. It was a drawing of three people, two adults and a kid, standing in front of a building with windows. "That's us," she said proudly. Ryan looked closer. One of the adults had dark hair pulled back. The other had lighter hair and was holding the kid's hand. "That's really good," Ryan said, his throat tight. "Can we hang it on the fridge?" "Yeah, absolutely." Emma grinned and ran off. Ryan stood there holding the drawing and felt tears prick his eyes. He'd spent so long trying to protect what he had, trying to keep everything safe and stable and controlled. But maybe that wasn't the point. Maybe the point was to let things grow, to let people in, to take risks and trust that even if things got messy, they'd figure it out. Victoria came home an hour later and Ryan showed her the drawing. She stared at it for a long moment, then looked up at him, tears in her eyes. "She drew me," she said quietly. "Yeah, she did." Victoria pulled him into a hug and Ryan held her close. This was what he'd been protecting all along, not the life he'd lost, but the life he was building, and it was better than anything he could have imagined. 6 months later, on a Saturday morning in early spring, Ryan woke up to sunlight streaming through the windows. He rolled over to find Victoria already awake, reading on her tablet. "Morning," she said. "Morning." Emma burst into the room a moment later, jumping onto the bed. "Can we go to the park?" Victoria laughed. "It's 8 a.m. "So?" Ryan pulled Emma into a bear hug, and she squealed. "Let us have coffee first," he said. "Fine." They spent the day together, just the three of them, wandering through the city. Emma had her camera, a birthday gift from Victoria, and she stopped every few blocks to take pictures of pigeons, street performers, hot dog carts. Later, They grabbed pizza and ate it on a bench overlooking the river. Emma leaned against Ryan, her eyes half closed. This was a good day. Yeah, Ryan said. It was. Victoria reached over and took his hand, and Ryan laced his fingers through hers. He thought about the man he'd been a year ago, scared, closed off, convinced that letting anyone in would mean losing everything. And he thought about the man he was now, still scared sometimes, still figuring things out, but not alone. Emma fell asleep on the subway ride home, her head on Ryan's shoulder. Victoria carried her backpack, and they walked the last few blocks in comfortable silence. When they got home, Ryan carried Emma to bed, tucked her in, and kissed her forehead. Victoria was waiting in the living room when he came out. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For taking a chance on me. Ryan pulled her close. Thank you for making it worth it. They stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, and Ryan felt the last piece of fear fall away. This was it. This was the life he'd been too afraid to imagine, and it was better than anything he could have hoped for. Because sometimes the life you were protecting wasn't meant to stay the same. Sometimes it was meant to grow, to change, to become something even better. And Ryan had finally learned to let it. Ryan didn't sleep that night either. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, Victoria's words echoing in his head. New York, regional director, 3 months. It was the kind of opportunity people spent their entire careers chasing, the kind of thing you didn't turn down. And Victoria was considering it. Because of him. The thought made Ryan's stomach twist. He'd never wanted to be the reason someone gave up their dreams. He'd watched Sarah sacrifice pieces of herself to make their life work, watched her set aside her own ambitions to focus on Emma, and he'd promised himself he'd never ask that of anyone else. But he hadn't asked. Victoria was offering, and that somehow made it worse. By morning, Ryan felt hollowed out. He made breakfast on autopilot, barely registering Emma's chatter about some project at school. When he dropped her off, she looked back at him with concern. You okay, Dad? Yeah, sweetheart, just tired. You're always tired lately. Ryan forced a smile. I'm fine. Have a good day. Emma didn't look convinced, but she grabbed her backpack and headed inside. Ryan sat in the parking lot for a long moment before driving to work. He needed to talk to Victoria, needed to figure out what the hell they were going to do. But when he got to the office, Victoria was already in back-to-back meetings. He saw her briefly in the hallway around noon, and she gave him a look that said they'd talk later. Later came at 6 p.m. when Victoria texted him, Can you come over tonight? After Emma's asleep? Yeah. Ryan went through the motions of dinner and homework and bedtime stories. Emma fell asleep halfway through the second chapter, and Ryan sat there for a few extra minutes, watching her breathe. She looked so peaceful, so safe, and Ryan had no idea how to tell her that their life might be about to change again. He texted Mrs. Alvarez, who agreed to sit with Emma, and drove to Victoria's apartment. She lived in a high-rise downtown, the kind of place with a doorman and marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. Ryan had only been there a handful of times. It felt like her, polished, controlled, expensive. Victoria answered the door in jeans and a sweater, her hair down, her face bare of makeup. She looked younger like this, more vulnerable. Hey, she said. Hey. She stepped aside and Ryan came in. The apartment was immaculate, decorated in neutral tones with modern furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine. There were no personal touches, no photos on the walls, no clutter. It looked like a hotel room. Victoria poured them both wine, and they sat on the couch, the silence heavy between them. I've been thinking about the offer, Victoria said finally. Ryan's chest tightened. And I don't know what to do. What do you want to do? Victoria set her glass down and looked at him. Honestly, I want both. I wanted the promotion, and I want you. You can't have both. I know. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, frustration bubbling up. So, what are you asking me? I'm asking what you want. What I want? Ryan stood, pacing across the room. I want you to take the job, Victoria. I want you to go to New York and be amazing and not look back. Victoria's face crumpled. Ryan, because I can't be the reason you give this up. I won't. You're not asking me to give it up. But I would be, just by existing, just by being here. Ryan turned to face her. You deserve this. You've worked your entire life for this, and I'm not going to be the guy who holds you back. Victoria stood, crossing the room to him. You're not holding me back. Aren't I? No, you're the first person who's ever made me want something more than work. The words hung between them, raw and honest. Ryan looked at her and saw everything he felt reflected in her eyes. I love you, Victoria said quietly. Ryan's breath caught. I know I haven't said it before, she continued. I know this is probably terrible timing, but I need you to know I love you, Ryan, and I don't want to lose you. Ryan closed the distance between them and kissed her. It was desperate and aching and full of everything he couldn't put into words. When they pulled apart, Ryan rested his forehead against hers. I love you too, he said. And that's why you have to take the job. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. I can't. Yes, you can. Not without you. The words hit Ryan like a physical blow. He pulled back slightly, searching her face. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't want to choose between my career and you. I'm saying there has to be another way. Ryan's mind was racing. Victoria, I can't just pick up and move to New York. I have Emma. I have a life here. I know. So what are we supposed to do? Victoria's hands were shaking. What if you came with me? Ryan stared at her. What? Come to New York, both of you. Emma and you. You can't be serious. Why not? Ryan stepped back, the reality of what she was suggesting crashing over him. Because Emma's entire life is here, her school, her friends, Mrs. Alvarez. This is the only home she's ever known. I know it's a lot. A lot? Victoria, you're asking me to uproot my daughter's entire existence. Victoria's face was pale. I'm asking if you'd consider it, that's all. Ryan ran both hands through his hair, feeling like the walls were closing in. I need to think. Of course. I should go. Ryan, please. I just need some space to process this. Victoria nodded, wrapping her arms around herself. Okay. Ryan grabbed his jacket and headed for the door, then stopped with his hand on the handle. I do love you, he said without turning around, but I don't know if love is enough. He left before Victoria could respond. The drive home was a blur. Ryan's hands gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles went white. When he got home, Mrs. Alvarez took one look at his face and quietly let herself out. Ryan sat on the couch in the dark, staring at nothing. New York. The idea was insane, except it wasn't. Not really. People moved for jobs all the time. People relocated for relationships. It happened. But did he want it to happen to him? To Emma? Ryan thought about the house, about Emma's school, about the life they'd built here piece by piece after Sarah died. Could he really leave all of that behind? And for what? A woman he'd known less than a year? A relationship that might not even last? But then he thought about Victoria, about the way she looked at him, about how she made him feel alive in a way he hadn't felt in years, about how calling her his wife at that market hadn't felt like a joke at all. Ryan sat there until nearly 3 a.m, his mind going in circles, before finally dragging himself to bed. The next morning, Emma noticed something was wrong immediately. Did you and Victoria have a fight? She asked over breakfast. Ryan looked up from his coffee, surprised. What makes you think that? You have the same face you had after you and Mom used to fight. Ryan's chest tightened. We didn't fight. We have to make a big decision. About what? Ryan hesitated, then decided Emma deserved the truth. Victoria got offered a really good job, but it's in New York. Emma's eyes widened. Is she leaving? Maybe. Are we going with her? Ryan blinked. What? Are we moving to New York too? I don't know. Would you want to? Emma thought about it, pushing her cereal around in the bowl. I don't know. I'd miss my friends, and Mrs. Alvarez, and my soccer team. I know. But you'd be sad if Victoria left. Well, Ryan couldn't deny it. Yeah, I would. Emma looked at him seriously, far too old for her 8 years. You've been happier since you met her. I don't want you to be sad again. I'm just saying, If we have to move so you can be happy, then maybe we should. Ryan felt his throat close up. He reached across the table and took Emma's hand. "You're the most important thing in my life," he said. "You know that, right?" "I know. So I'm not making any decision without thinking about what's best for you." Emma squeezed his hand. "I know that too." Ryan dropped Emma off at school and spent the morning in a fog. He tried to work, tried to focus on the projects in front of him, but his mind kept drifting. Around 11, his phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Can we talk?" "Yeah, lunch? I'll come to you." They met at the diner, their usual spot. Victoria looked like she hadn't slept either, dark circles under her eyes, her normally perfect composure frayed at the edges. "I'm sorry," she said as soon as she sat down. "I shouldn't have sprung that on you last night." "It's okay." "It's not. I was being selfish." Ryan shook his head. "You were being honest. There's a difference." Victoria twisted her napkin in her hands. "I've been thinking about it all night, and I've decided something." Ryan's stomach dropped. "What?" "But I'm not going to take the job." "Victoria, let me finish." She took a breath. "I've spent my entire career chasing the next promotion, the next title, the next accomplishment. And for what? So I could have a bigger office? So I could tell people I made it to regional director? This is your dream." "No, it was my dream, past tense, because somewhere along the way my dreams changed, and I didn't even notice until you asked me to choose." Ryan leaned forward. "What are your dreams now?" Victoria met his eyes, and there were tears in hers. "You, Emma, this, a life that's about more than just work. You can have both." "Not if one of them is in New York and the other is here." Ryan reached across the table and took her hand. "What if I told you I've been thinking about it too?" Victoria's breath caught. "About moving?" "Yeah." "And?" Ryan exhaled slowly. "And I'm terrified. But I'm also realizing that maybe what Emma and I need isn't to stay in the same place forever. Maybe what we need is to take a risk, to try something new." "Ryan, I can't ask you to do that." "You're not asking, I'm offering." "But Emma, I talked to Emma this morning, and you want to know what she said? She said if we have to move so I can be happy, then maybe we should." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "She said that?" "She's a pretty amazing kid." "She is." Ryan squeezed her hand. "I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I'm not saying I'm not scared out of my mind. But I think maybe we should do this." "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm willing to try, if you are." Victoria stood up, came around to his side of the booth, and kissed him right there in the middle of the diner. Someone wolf whistled from across the room. The waitress grinned. Ryan didn't care. When they pulled apart, Victoria was smiling through tears. "We're really doing this?" she asked. "Yeah, we're really doing this." The next few weeks were chaos. Ryan gave his notice at work. David took it better than expected, shaking his hand and wishing him luck. Marcus threw together a last-minute going-away party, complete with a cake that said, "Don't forget about us in the big city." Victoria flew to New York twice to apartment hunt, sending Ryan photos of potential places. They settled on a 3-bedroom in Brooklyn with good schools nearby, big windows, and enough space for all of them. Emma had her moments. She cried when she had to say goodbye to her soccer team. She spent an entire afternoon with Mrs. Alvarez, who promised to visit and made Emma promise to call every week. But she was also excited in a way Ryan hadn't expected. She started making lists of things she wanted to see in New York. She picked out paint colors for her new room. She asked Victoria 100 questions about what the city was like. Ryan watched his daughter adapt and felt a surge of pride. She was stronger than he'd given her credit for. The hardest part was packing up the house. Ryan stood in the living room surrounded by boxes, looking at the bare walls where family photos had hung, and felt the weight of what he was leaving behind. This was the house where he and Sarah had brought Emma home from the hospital, where they'd celebrated birthdays and holidays, where Sarah had died. It was full of ghosts. But maybe that was okay. Maybe it was time to let the ghosts rest. Emma found him standing there, and she slipped her hand into his. "It's weird, huh?" she said. "Yeah, it is." Do you think Mom would be okay with us leaving? Ryan looked down at his daughter, saw Sarah's eyes looking back at him, and felt his chest tighten. I think she'd want us to be happy, he said, wherever that is. Me too. They stood there together for a moment, saying goodbye to the life they'd known. Then Emma squeezed his hand. Come on, Victoria's waiting. Moving day arrived too fast and not fast enough. The moving truck pulled up at dawn. Ryan, Victoria, and Emma loaded the last of the boxes while Mrs. Alvarez stood on her porch watching, tears streaming down her face. When everything was loaded, Ryan went over to say goodbye. You take care of yourself, Mrs. Alvarez said, pulling him into a tight hug. I will. And thank you for everything. That girl is special, she said, nodding toward Victoria. Don't let her go. I won't. Mrs. Alvarez hugged Emma next, holding her for a long time. You be good for your dad, okay? I will. And you call me. Every week. I promise. Ryan locked up the house for the last time, slipped the key into the lockbox for the new owners, and walked to his car without looking back. The drive to New York took 7 hours with traffic. Emma slept for the first half, then woke up and peppered Victoria with questions for the rest of the drive. Victoria answered patiently, pointing out landmarks as they got closer to the city. When they finally crossed into Brooklyn, Emma pressed her face against the window, eyes wide. It's huge, she breathed. Ryan caught Victoria's eye in the rearview mirror and they both smiled. The apartment was everything the photos had promised. Hardwood floors, big windows, exposed brick in the living room. Emma's room had a window seat that looked out over the street, and she immediately claimed it as her favorite spot. The movers wouldn't arrive until the next day, so they ordered pizza and ate it sitting on the floor. This is weird, Emma said through a mouthful of pepperoni. Good weird or bad weird? Ryan asked. Emma thought about it. Just weird, but I think it'll be good. Victoria reached over and ruffled her hair. I think so too. That night, after Emma had fallen asleep on a pile of blankets in her empty room, Ryan and Victoria stood by the window looking out at the city. We did it, Victoria said quietly. Yeah, we did. Are you freaking out? Ryan laughed. Completely. Me too. Ryan turned to look at her. But we're going to make this work. How do you know? Because we love each other, and because we're not doing this alone. Victoria leaned into him, and Ryan wrapped his arms around her. I love you, she said. I love you too. They stood there in the quiet, the city glowing below them, and Ryan felt something settle in his chest. This was home now, not the apartment, not the city, but this, the three of them together. The first few months were an adjustment period that tested all of them in different ways. Emma started at her new school and came home crying after the first week because nobody sat with her at lunch. Ryan's heart broke, but Victoria sat down with her that night and told her stories about being the new kid, about how lonely it felt but how it got better if you just kept trying. By the second week, Emma had made a tentative friend. By the end of the month, she'd joined the soccer team and had a small group of girls she ate lunch with every day. Ryan went through what felt like endless rounds of interviews before finally landing a position at a marketing firm in Midtown. The work was good, the team was solid, and his boss didn't care about office politics. Victoria threw herself into her new role with the intensity Ryan had come to recognize. She managed a team twice the size of her old one, worked long hours, came home exhausted but energized. They found their rhythm slowly, through trial and error and more than a few arguments about whose turn it was to do dishes or pick Emma up from soccer practice. It wasn't smooth. Victoria had never lived with anyone before, and she struggled with the lack of alone time. Ryan was used to running his household his way, and having someone else's input felt intrusive at first. Emma had moments where she missed her old house, her old friends, her old life. But they worked through it. 3 months in, Ryan came home from work to find Victoria and Emma in the kitchen covered in flour. What's going on? He asked. Emma looked up, grinning. We're making cookies. Victoria's teaching me her grandma's recipe. It's a disaster, Victoria admitted, gesturing at the flour-covered counters. But a fun disaster, Emma added. Ryan leaned against the doorframe watching them and felt warmth spread through his chest. This was what he'd been afraid to hope for. Not some perfect, seamless blending of lives, but real moments. Messy, flower-covered, imperfect moments that added up to something bigger. Later that night, after Emma had gone to bed and they'd cleaned up the kitchen disaster, Ryan and Victoria sat on the couch with glasses of wine. "I've been thinking," Victoria said, about us, about the future." Ryan set down his glass, his pulse quickening. "Okay." Victoria turned to face him. "I know we haven't really talked about where this is going. We've been so focused on just surviving the move and getting settled, but I need to know if you see a future here, with me, long term." Ryan took her hand. "I moved my entire life to be with you. What do you think?" Victoria laughed, but her eyes were serious. "I need to hear you say it." Ryan shifted closer, holding her gaze. "I want this to be forever, Victoria. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to build a life with you. I want Emma to grow up seeing what a real partnership looks like. I want all of it." Victoria's breath caught. "You mean that?" Every word. She kissed him, and it felt like a promise. When they pulled apart, Victoria was smiling through tears. "I want that too," she said. "All of it." 6 months after the move, Ryan proposed. It wasn't planned. There was no ring, no elaborate setup. They were just sitting on the couch after Emma had gone to bed, talking about nothing in particular, and Ryan suddenly realized he didn't want to wait anymore. "Marry me," he said. Victoria's head snapped up. "What?" "Marry me. For real this time." "Ryan, I know I don't have a ring. I know this isn't romantic, but I don't want to wait. I want you to actually be my wife, not just someone I accidentally called my wife at a farmer's market." Victoria started laughing and crying at the same time. "That's the worst proposal I've ever heard." "Is that a no?" "That's a yes, you idiot." Ryan pulled her into his arms, his heart pounding with joy and relief. They told Emma the next morning over breakfast. "Victoria and I are getting married," Ryan said, trying to sound casual. Emma's eyes went wide. "Really? Really?" Emma looked at Victoria. "So you're going to be my stepmom?" Victoria's expression turned serious. "Only if you're okay with that." Emma thought about it for a moment, then smiled. "Yeah, I'm okay with it." "Issa, can I be in the wedding?" she added. "Of course," Victoria said. "We wouldn't do it without you." Emma grinned and went back to her cereal like they'd just discussed the weather, and Ryan and Victoria looked at each other and started laughing. The wedding was small and intimate, held in a garden in Brooklyn on a warm day in June. Just close friends, a few co-workers, Mrs. Alvarez, who flew in from their old city, and Emma, who took her role as flower girl very seriously. Victoria wore a simple dress, her hair loose, flowers woven through it. She looked beautiful in a way that made Ryan's chest ache. When she walked down the aisle toward him, she was smiling through tears. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves. Promises to love each other through the hard parts, to support each other's dreams, to make room for all of them. When the officiant pronounced them married, Emma cheered louder than anyone. Ryan kissed his wife, his actual wife this time, and felt like every piece of his life had finally clicked into place. At the reception, Emma pulled him aside. "You look happy, Dad." Ryan smiled down at her. "I am, sweetheart. Mom would be happy too, because you're not sad anymore." Ryan's throat tightened. He pulled her into a hug, holding her close. "I love you, kiddo. I love you too." A year after the move, Ryan stood in the kitchen of their Brooklyn apartment making breakfast on a Saturday morning. Victoria was still asleep, and Emma was curled up on the couch with a book. The apartment was a mess. There were dishes in the sink from dinner the night before. Emma's soccer cleats were by the door. Victoria's work files were spread across the dining table. It was chaotic and imperfect and real, and Ryan loved it. Victoria appeared in the doorway, her hair a mess, wearing one of Ryan's old t-shirts. "Morning," she said, her voice rough with sleep. "Morning." She came over and kissed him, tasting like toothpaste and morning breath. "Coffee?" Ryan asked. "Please." Emma looked up from her book. Can we go to the park today? Sure, Victoria said. After breakfast. Can we get hot dogs? We'll see. Emma went back to her book, satisfied, and Ryan poured Victoria coffee. They stood there in the kitchen, Victoria leaning against him, and Ryan thought about how far they'd come. From that awkward moment at the farmer's market to this. A life built together, piece by piece, through all the messy, imperfect, beautiful parts. What are you thinking about? Victoria asked. About how I almost let fear keep me from this. Victoria looked up at him. But you didn't. No, I didn't? Why not? Ryan thought about it. Because Emma told me if the rules were dumb, I should change them. And because calling you my wife that day didn't feel like a joke. It felt like the truth I just hadn't figured out yet. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. I love you. I love you too. Emma appeared beside them, interrupting the moment. Are you guys being gross again? Ryan laughed. Maybe a little. Ugh, can we go to the park now? After breakfast, Victoria said, ruffling her hair. Emma groaned but climbed back onto her stool. Ryan went back to making pancakes. Victoria poured orange juice and Emma narrated her book to them, whether they were listening or not. It was ordinary. It was perfect. And as Ryan watched the two most important people in his life, he understood something he'd been too scared to see before. Love doesn't replace what you've lost. It doesn't fill the empty spaces or erase the pain, but it does give you something new to build on, something real and messy and worth protecting. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop protecting yourself from the possibility of more. Stop holding on to the past so tightly that you can't reach for the future. Stop being so afraid of losing what you have that you forget to notice what you could gain. Ryan had spent 4 years building walls around his heart, convinced that keeping people out was the only way to keep Emma safe. But letting Victoria in hadn't made their life less stable. It had made it bigger, fuller, more whole. And that was the thing about love, Ryan realized. The real kind. The kind that lasted. It didn't demand you choose between the people you cared about. It made room for all of them. Later that afternoon, after they'd spent hours at the park, and Emma had convinced them to get ice cream on the way home, they walked back to the apartment together. Emma skipped ahead, her ice cream cone already half melted. Victoria's hand was warm in Ryan's, and the summer sun felt good on his face. This is nice, Victoria said quietly. Yeah, it is. I'm glad we did this, all of it. Ryan squeezed her hand. Me too. When they got home, Emma went straight to her room to work on some art project, and Ryan and Victoria collapsed on the couch. Victoria leaned her head on his shoulder. Do you ever regret it, moving here, all the chaos? Ryan thought about it, really thought about it. No, he said, not for a second. Not even when Emma cried for a week about missing her old friends. Not even then. Not even when we fought about whose turn it was to do laundry for 3 days straight? Ryan laughed. Okay, maybe during that, but not overall. Victoria smiled. Good, because I don't regret it either. They sat there in comfortable silence, and Ryan felt grateful for all of it. The mess, the chaos, the moments of doubt and fear and uncertainty. Because on the other side of all that was this. A family, a home, a life worth living. Emma emerged from her room an hour later with a drawing she'd made. It showed 3 stick figures standing in front of a building with lots of windows. That's us, she announced proudly. Ryan looked closer. One figure had dark hair pulled back. Another had lighter hair. The third was smaller, holding both their hands. Can we hang it on the fridge? Emma asked. Yeah, man, Ryan said, his throat tight. Absolutely. Emma ran to the kitchen, and Ryan heard the sound of magnets clicking against metal. Victoria was watching him, her eyes soft. You okay? Yeah, just thinking about how different things are now. Good different or bad different? Good, Ryan said without hesitation. Definitely good. That night, after Emma had gone to bed, Ryan stood in the doorway of her room watching her sleep. She looked peaceful, her stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm, her hair spread across the pillow. She'd been through so much, lost her mother, left the only home she'd ever known, started over in a new city, and she'd handled it with more grace than Ryan could have imagined. Victoria appeared beside him, slipping her hand into his. "She's amazing," Victoria whispered. "She really is. We're lucky." "Yeah, we are." They stood there for a moment longer, then quietly closed the door and went to their own room. As Ryan got into bed beside Victoria, he thought about the journey that had brought them here, all the fear and uncertainty and risk, and he thought about that moment at the farmer's market when he'd called Victoria his wife without thinking. It had felt natural then, and now, lying here beside her with a ring on her finger and a life built together, it still felt natural, like it had always been meant to happen this way. Victoria rolled over to face him. "What are you smiling about?" "Just thinking about how I accidentally told the truth that day." "What day?" "At the market, when I called you my wife." Victoria's expression softened. "You think it was the truth?" "I think some part of me knew it would be, eventually." Victoria kissed him softly. "I'm glad your subconscious is smarter than you are." Ryan laughed. "Me too." They fell asleep wrapped around each other, and for the first time in years, Ryan didn't dream about the past. He dreamed about the future, about Emma growing up in the city, about watching Victoria continue to thrive in her career, about the life they were building together, one messy, imperfect day at a time. And when he woke up the next morning to sunlight streaming through the windows and the sound of Emma singing off-key in her room and Victoria's warm body pressed against his, he felt nothing but gratitude. For the risk he'd taken, for the life he'd found, for the family he'd been brave enough to let in. Because in the end, that's what it had all come down to. Bravery, not the kind that looked like fearlessness, but the kind that meant being afraid and doing it anyway. The kind that meant opening yourself up to loss because the possibility of love was worth it. The kind that meant letting go of control and trusting that even if things got messy, you'd figure it out together. Ryan had spent so long trying to protect what he had that he'd almost missed out on what he could have. But Emma had been right all along. Sometimes you had to change the rules. Sometimes you had to take a chance. And sometimes the life you were protecting wasn't meant to stay the same. Sometimes it was meant to grow into something bigger, something better, something that made room for more love than you ever thought possible. Ryan had learned that lesson the hard way. But he'd learned it. And now with his wife sleeping beside him and his daughter singing in the next room and an entire future stretching out ahead of them, he understood what it all meant. Home wasn't a place. It was the people you chose to build a life with. And love wasn't about finding someone perfect. It was about finding someone worth the mess. Someone who made you brave enough to try. Someone who fit into your life not because everything was easy, but because they were worth the work. Victoria had been that person for Ryan, and he'd been that person for her. And together, with Emma bridging the space between them, they'd built something real, something that would last. Not because it was perfect, but because it was theirs.